Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and I'm back with my Saturday live streams that I like to do, and we're getting back to the regular groove of things. Well, less or more. So, still putting out some more, I should say, more quantity related pre-recorded videos than I had been in the habit of doing before Watches and Wonders, but I actually got through an entire week where I didn't really focus on Watches and Wonders specifically, which at this point is kind of like, well, I could still possibly give some first reactions on some of the releases, but there's generally content available at this point for you to be able to weigh in and see other people that maybe even handle the watches in person. So that being said, we do have a topic today that I wanted to focus on in the wake of Watches and Wonders, and that is Tudor, because I think that there's probably a lot that's worth having. Probably Tudor's always worth having a conversation about, but I'm reminded of a lot about what I find so interesting about their company and how people react to it, or at least how there are two categories. There's how like enthusiasts react to Tudor, and then there's the buying public reacting to Tudor. So I want to explore that today. I think it would be a good topic rather than catching up on what few news there is. Most of it that I saw was just hands-on time with watches that were shown at Watches and Wonders. So anyway, but I'll do some housekeeping stuff out of the way. Good morning, Kevin. I saw you got your message in even before I went live. And good morning, Tuna. And thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Do not swim with your precious metal Rolex watch, Tuna. The sharks could come for it, and it would be very sad. So in terms of housekeeping stuff, what an adventure. So yesterday, no one cares about this, but I'm going to waste time with it anyway. So yesterday I decided I was going to mow so that I did not have to mow after recording today. And it's cooled off here, so I didn't want to do it in the morning. So I went out and I was mowing along. I didn't wear a watch because I didn't want to get my G-Shock out of the watch box, and I didn't want to wear whatever I wore yesterday. I don't even remember. Oh, it was my Zenith Chronomaster original. Yes. So, which I actually had a reset issue for the first time with that watch. Actually reset okay. It felt a little weird. And then when I triggered it, the second hand it was catching on something. Resetting it worked fine. I tried it 16 more times and it was fine. So, but anyway, I don't normally mow in that watch. So anyway, that's not the story. The story is I was going along and there was a stick in the yard. And I was going to pick up the sticks, but this stick wasn't that big. So I ignored it. But I clipped it into the ground or the fence or something, and it just gouged up my leg. So I'm like, okay, I think I need to keep going. And then I'm like, nope, I think my sock's going to fill with blood. So I go inside and sterilize everything and bandage up. So now I'm just like, ugh. I did get done mowing them. I was like, I got to finish it tonight because I ain't going to feel like doing it tomorrow. So my leg's all gauzed up now because it actually just went up like, I think it's about this big of a gash. I was a little surprised, but not deep enough to worry too much. No. There was one of those instances though where I saw the skin, and then like 3 seconds later the blood started to come up, but it didn't immediately clot. And I thought, that stick, who knows where that stick's been? It's probably been outside. So I thought I need to wash the wound with soap anyway. So anyway, that's my non-watch story that I have for y'all today. On the wrist is my Stova Flieger Type B classic model. I finally got it back on the default Stova strap as well. I've been wearing it on a deluxe strap, kind of dressed up a little more, but I don't wear this watch to work all that often. Sometimes I do, but usually I wear a more dressy dress watch versus this. So it's on the wrist for the weekend. Okay, so let's see what else is going on. Koji says, having never owned a Tudor or Rolex for that matter, I'm curious to see what everyone's thoughts will be. Maybe everyone will have no thoughts. We don't know. We do not know. And Doug, hey Doug, welcome to live stream. Hi Dennis, hanging out for some famous New England barbecue soon. Well, I've heard stories that there is New England barbecue. I don't know how good it is or isn't. Speaking of not knowing how good or not good something is, I did mention that I actually have been producing a couple pre-recorded videos more than my old pace was. So and the YouTube guides say you're supposed to have your face on the stuff. I don't like putting my face on the video thumbnails. I think it looks weird. But anyway, so I've had a couple. This one was the Q&A. I wanted to do a Q&A episode. Some channels like Federico, like that's all he does. Well, not all, but it's like his bread and butter. But I always feel like I struggle to get questions. Well, I had some good questions. Let's actually had some decent views. So That one, we talked a little bit about Rolex and Tudor, but go all over a whole bunch of other topics. So that one's actually done pretty well. And then last night, I wanted to get it out sooner, but I just had a lot I had to mow. And then I had to clean my wound. And then I had to mow some more. So I finally got this edited up, but I decided to dive into the world of the Rolex customizer, went through every professional watch they have and looked at and counted up the number of iterations of precious metal, two-tone, and base metal watches. So it'd be like if the watch had a black dial and then a blue dial, those are two. Was that on Oyster? If it's again on Jubilee, that's two more. You see how? So 106 watches there are options for currently on Rolex's website. So that's what that video is. Now, there are not very many views right now because it came out last night. It's like, I think the thing there just said 150. I will say, though, there have already been, I think, double-digit comments, including my replies. So it's a little unfair. But not a single person has complimented me on the table I made and where it says precious Golem's head is. So I'm basically disappointed in all of you. If you haven't seen it, I'm disappointed that you didn't watch it. And if you did see it, I'm disappointed that you didn't mention Golem. Like, that took, like, I spent time on that, and there was no praise for it. So you guys, there's something wrong with like all of you, and it's really, really disappointing. So, okay. All right. What we got before we jump into the Tudor topic? Scott says, I still take issue with characterizing Rolex's jewelry. They are legible, water resistant, and durable. That's the clickbait of the thumbnail. The video says, questions, are they just jewelry? And my argument is, if it's in precious metal and it's a tool watch, it's jewelry. I don't care that it's still got 300 meters of water resistance. I don't care that the chronograph still works. If it's in yellow gold, it's become jewelry. It's not a dress watch, so it has to be jewelry at this point, in my opinion. You're free to disagree. If you want to get a stainless steel Daytona, I would say, no, that is not jewelry. That is a tool watch. A stainless steel Submariner is it? Yeah, you can wear it as jewelry. I mean, we all wear watch. I mean, the look is part of it. But my argument that I went into that was, there's no reason to make things. Oh, all right. And the Explorer 2 is a bad example because it's only in base metal. But there were a lot of talk to 3 years ago when it was their anniversary that maybe they'd come out with an all gold Explorer 2. If you're making a spelunking watch out of gold, it's jewelry. It just is. Just is. It's science, guys. It's science. So that's my angle with it. The thing that I think is surprising is the amount of variety you get in precious metal versus the amount of variety you get in base metal, and it's pretty lopsided. But I'll say no more. The video can dive into that a little bit. So, Koji, excuse me. Koji says, I'm not sure Rolex would want Golem representing their brand. Well, you know what? Rolex doesn't get to decide. I get to decide. And Golem is now the official spokesperson. But I do like how you wrote it as a golem, like a clay golem coming to life. But yes, Golem. Nev says, I noticed the Golem and thought it was funny, but I didn't mention it. Well, it's too late now. You can't go back and mention it. That would be wrong. Tony, welcome to live stream, says, are you saying the Golem game touched you in a special way and you are now obsessed? Well, I've always been a strong proponent of Lord of the Rings. I watch the special edition at least once a year, all of it. And so Golem just needed to work his way. But look, guys, the whole point, if I have to spell it out, if you haven't seen the movies in particular, he's always talking about his precious, my precious. So I didn't spell out like precious metal, gold, platinum in the table for the tally for precious. I just wrote precious. Well, it begs for Golem to be there if you say precious. So that was the thing. The one ring was in yellow gold. Was it jewelry too? Yes. Rings are jewelry, guys. Well, no, no, this is a functional ring. Well, yeah, that one actually, that's probably more of a tool ring than any normal hand ring would be, but they're almost all jewelry. Doug says, sending my 1971 GMT for service soon. It's been about 10 years. What should I expect to pay for a Rolex service now? If you don't need crystal or the crown or anything replaced, and it's just a servicing, it should be under $1,000, I believe, for the GMT. So if you need a new crystal, if you need a new crown, anything like that, maybe more towards 1,200. I'd say like 800 to 1,200, kind of expecting there. But that's going through the official Rolex dealer. If you go to an independent, and an independent should be able to service your Rolex, you should be able to do it quite a bit less than that. So anyway, FYI. But a few years ago, I saw the table of watch costs that the official Rolex ADs were charging, and it's under $1,000 without replacing parts, like for everything other than the Daytona. Okay, let's see. Tony judges Sauron. That's unfortunate for Sauron. Koji says, I can think some Rolex flippers that should have the Nazgul sent after them. Well, we might be, supposedly we're getting back into the day where that's not such a big deal. I did go to the Rolex dealer this week. The person I worked with 11 months ago was not there, though they left them a note and I heard from them via email later. So, because I was like, do you have a time estimate? I was a little more blunt now. I'm like, it's been 11 months. I've looked online, it depends on the locations. On the heavier trafficked locations, the no date subs usually are obtainable within 6 to 12 months. So I was kind of feeling like I'm near the window. The date ones usually a little faster because they make a lot more of them. But anyway, it's just, I'm sorry. I'm less laughing because of the Shire Rolex. All right, we're going to go way too much into Lord of the Rings. I could spend this entire hour talking about Lord of the Rings. I really could. But I don't think that's why most of you are here. Most of you are here because of Tudor. So anyway, back to because they had Tudors. I did ask the Rolex AD while I was there, do you have any of the new Watches and Wonders Tudors? Because while I'm not planning to get any of them, I thought if they have the new 58 GMT, I'd like to see how it wore on the wrist. They did not, but they did finally have a Polaris. So I finally got to try the Polaris. It wore well. But did nothing for me. Like I felt nothing about the watch. So that's definitely off the list. And I tried on a few of the smaller Reversos because my Reverso is actually fairly large. And I'm thinking about getting rid of the Reverso because quite frankly, between the Longa and my Parmigiani Tonda, I don't wear it. Because the Parmigiani's in white gold. So it has the same color basically that the JLC does. So I just don't wear it very much. And it's like, Richemont has jacked their prices so much. I probably can at least get back what I paid for that watch a few years ago. So, because people want Reversos to this day. Koji says, I would imagine the wait list for a no date sub is the longest, or would it be the Daytona? The Daytona is the longest, Koji. And then if we're staying base metal, GMT Master 2, certain flavors of those are longer, like Pepsi bezels and stuff. Those are hard to get. So Rolex no date sub, I don't know where exactly it falls because I do make a decent number of them, but maybe more in the middle ish because it's a popular line. But the Rolex sub date is by far more preferred. Like people want, and that's why you see more variety with it, or so I would argue. Like you get different dial colors and so even base metal. I think you get a couple choices with the Rolex with date sub with date. No date. There's no choice. It's oyster bracelet, stainless steel, black dial. That's the one look. Kind of like the Air King. The Air King has no customization. There's one Air King. There's no flavor to it. You can't even change the bracelet. There's one Air King. So it's kind of like that. Coach is like, don't get rid of your Reverso. Well, part of the thing was I tried on some other ones because I thought about upgrading it to a precious metal, smaller precious metal one. And then it would look different. And then maybe I'd wear it more. It's kind of the thought. See, Neff is the total opposite. It's like, I'd get rid of the Reverso and get another dress watch in a metal you don't have, like Lucent Steel. If only it was so easy to get. I finally, on Chrono 24, saw a Lucent Steel Chopard come up from last year's Watches and Wonders with the salmon dial. They want, I think it was 30 or 32,000. So they added about $6,000 to $8,000, I think, to the retail price for it. Not as steep as I thought necessarily, but it is still just steel. Okay, so chat's been very lively today. I appreciate that. But we are 15 minutes in roughly. So let's go ahead and let's get to the topic about Tudor and the overhypedness. Now, this isn't about whether we like Tudor or don't like Tudor. A lot of people like Tudor. I've owned a couple Tudors. I don't have any anymore currently. But it's definitely something that has been on my mind a lot lately for a couple of reasons. One, the Morgan Stanley report that came out on Swiss watch sales. And I'm going to bring that up later. I normally would have done a video on the Morgan Stanley report. And honestly, I just kind of got lost in the shuffle with all the releases prior to Watches and Wonders. I just never covered it. I meant to, and I never got back to it. So we're going to bring it up here in the context of Tudor. But in the wake of Watches and Wonders 2024, there has been a lot of discussion about, who won Watches and Wonders. And I thought about doing my own, like maybe awards, like who won, who lost, like best reveal, worst reveal. I don't know yet. It's a lot of work. And I still, honestly, out of the 54 brands, I have not looked at all the watches. Watches and Wonders didn't make it easy this year because their website only focuses on one reveal out of each brand. And a lot of brands revealed more than one watch. So they've just made it tedious, and I'm kind of annoyed. Anyway, but Tudor, did they win Watches and Wonders? Well, some people say yes. And some people maybe don't say they won Watches and Wonders, but they were a highlight of Watches and Wonders. In fact, I gave a lot of praise to the GMT Black Bay 58 that they came out with the Coke bezel, even with the gilt numbers on it, because it meets a lot of desire that a lot of people have had. They wanted a smaller GMT. Tudor finally delivered it. So in particular, I've seen more so on probably in the YouTube space, a lot of praise, maybe a little overly praiseful praise, little over the top, a little hypey, a little driven. And I've wondered, is that really fair? Is that really right? Now, part of that is I want to highlight a few articles as well. We won't spend a lot of time on it. I got a whole bunch of links in the show notes to them if you want to read them. But something I've noted it a lot of times on these live streams, so not to bore you all, but I'll note it here again. Now, even using my channel as an example, Tudor gets the clicks. That's part of the reason why you will hear about them all the time on YouTube. I mean, note that this video, which is only 3 days old, and I'm a small channel. I have a little over 3,000 subscribers. So you see it's got 1.7K views. And in the title, it says Rolex, and it also says Tudor. But if you look at all my Watches and Wonders coverage, where are the views at on all my first thoughts? Granted, these came out on different days, but Grand Seiko, 580 views. Chopard, 202 views. That's my lowest viewed video. I did that because someone requested it, and it was a cool watch. But it's the worst performing video of any I did. Rolex 1908, 1.3 thousand. IWC, 560. JLC, 390. Patek, 390. Tudor, 2.2 thousand. And my highest performing one was the first video I got out, which was the Rolex GMT at 2.9 thousand. So my point is, those of us who do watch YouTube channels learned very, very quickly that if you do a Tudor video, you get a lot more views than you do on practically and this is not just from Watches and Wonders. My Patek videos always do worse than my Tudor videos. Now, maybe it's because I don't own a Patek, but most of these Tudors aren't ones I own either. So so I think, well, maybe it's because people can buy them. That's probably part of it. But again, I don't tend to see the same performance out of Cartier either. It's just one of those things. So it's not just in the YouTube space, however. So here are a few examples. So here's, again, as I noted, links are in the video description, but Bloomberg article on the 21 best new watches from Watches and Wonders. What a shock. Black Bay 58 GMT is covered in that list. Boom. All right. Got a couple pieces from Fratello. RJ, favorite watches from Watches and Wonders. Wasn't in his main list, but he did put it in the honorable mention because RJ's main list is all unobtainium, ultra expensive watches. And in fact, a lot of his piece goes into talking about how he's feeling Watches and Wonders is now just an event for the ultra rich. And that's what he ends up spending all his time talking about. But then he notes, like, if it was really going into watches that he would possibly buy, the first thing he brings up is the Tudor Black Bay Master Chronometer. So there you go. Example there. Another Fratello piece, this time by George. I think that's a little less. Have you ever seen George's picks? He's a little more, I guess if I'm remembering, if he's the one I'm keeping straight, it'd be like if you were to ask AI to pick luxury watches, that's kind of like what George's picks are. They're very predictable, maybe a good way to say it. But his number 3 that he put in his list, the Tudor Black Bay Monochrome, not the GMT, but he put in the Monochrome, the most Submariner to not be a total homage out of Tudor. But it's okay, guys, because it's Tudor, right? It's okay. They can do it. Yeah, it's got its own handset and everything else. But hey, that was the whole linchpin to my video that I did on the Q&A was I've had people ask me, like, would I get this homage instead of a real Submariner because it's so much cheaper and it's from the same ownership family. So there you go, another example. So this is a narrative that we see a lot of, but I want to explore why I don't necessarily think, sorry, I get alerts when there are spills. Well, one of the weird things with my job, I get these alerts when they're like emergency response things like spills, hazmat spills. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't clean up spills. That's not my job. So anyway, so you might hear that ring a few times because I do have to get the alerts. But before jumping to the next piece on it, I want to go ahead and get caught up on the chat because that's the context. I just want to say, like, there's a big emphasis on what Tudor does. And I think it's really interesting, especially in the context of Watches and Wonders, because I think they did things that are going to sell. So it's right to talk about it, but they weren't innovative, really, were they? That they put were we really surprised that they put the GMT into a Black Bay 58 case? They've done it with so much other stuff. I mean, like, they took their bronze watch and 58ified it. They took the whole Black Bay line and 58ified it. So, yeah, and that's now like a verb, 58ing. We're going to 58 something. So and monochroming the Black Bay so it looks even more like a sub. I mean, it looks good, but whoa, what innovation? And it's a palette swap. It's a palette swap. But the reason why I point this out is I think rightly a lot of people have complained that Rolex was very boring this year. Because what they do, they did a color palette swap on their GMT bezel. I think it looks good, but it's still super low effort. And they stuck in some baguettes, jewels into some Daytonas. Now, setting aside that I think the idea of like an emoji watch without a Rolex was stupid, and we want to talk about jewelry, stupid stuff like that in no way interests me. But a lot of people have pointed out it was at least more different than what we saw, coming out of them this year. But was Tudor really any better? I'd say the GMT, sure, but it's a case they already had and a GMT function they already had, and that they got stuck together. It's not surprising. I'm not saying they should be surprising, but it's like, why do we treat them better than we treat Rolex? Is maybe the question I want to kind of posit that. That's where I'm kind of going with some of that overhype angle on this. So catching up with chat, Koji, this is regarding the Chopard and Lucent Steel. Yikes, 32K. Yeah, it was around that. It might have been 30,000 US. I don't remember exactly. I saw it and I thought, oh, neat. There's one that's actually available secondhand now. Neff says, I think the consumer lost Watches and Wonders. Super boring this year. That is a narrative that a lot of people have agreed with. However, and I don't have a link to the article in this because I wasn't going to use it as a focus point, but Swiss luxury watch sales are down so far. They are down for the year. So honestly, and they have to plan a lot of this stuff out ahead of time, but this is not a year to expect huge watch demand. I would not be surprised if we see 2024 total sales in dollars lower than 2023. And given that, is it really the environment you want to be really pushing the boundary? In one way, you could say yes, because then maybe you'll get people to spend dollars on you. But I think on their hand, if they're going to kind of hunker down to weather the storm, trying, staying with staid designs, tried and true. I mean, we saw a variety, like Chopek going ahead and turning out something that was, they put out some new Antarctiques, don't get me wrong, but they actually put out a new dress watch, and they sure haven't been relying on that lately. That was a surprise. There were some brands that did some stuff that was a little surprising. Parmigiani redoing the Toric. I don't think they're going to sell very many, but they redid it. So, it just depends on the brand, really. But I could see why a lot of people would find it boring, especially at the tier where people could afford to spend. Scott says, I think Tudor falls in the same camp as Grand Seiko. Nice watches, media darlings, poor value retention. Yes. Now, the nice thing is, one of the things I do like about Tudor is it's great to, especially if you wait a year, you can find practically any of these hyped up ones. Like this GMT 58, you're going to find that probably on Joma Shop this time next year. And you'll find it used quicker than that. And probably after the first 6 months, I think, this is a guess, but I think you'll start to be able to find it less. Because the value retention it's not terrible. Like secondhand dealers want the Tudors and they will buy them. So it's not a hard watch to move. I traded one of mine and I sold one. And the one I sold in under a week. Now, this was a few years ago, but it was a 1926, not exactly setting the world on fire in terms of demand. But so it's easy to get rid of. But yeah, I took a bath on my Grand Seiko and I got my Grand Seiko less than it retailed for. I still lost a lot when I got rid of it. Koji says, what watch would you don with a hazmat suit? The Ed Sheeran G-Shock, are those available? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would. No, I'd wear the JLC because then it's not getting wrist time any other way. Might as well get wrist time in the hazmat. Neff says, need a precious metal watch for hazmat spills to avoid issues with corrosion. That's a good point. Now I need the upgraded Reverso, not my steel one. Just here to answer a question. No, Scotty says, in response to his Tudor Overhyped. Thank you, Scotty, for succinctly summarizing what I'd probably spend an hour on, but you dealt with in about 3 seconds, or at least that's how long it took me to read it. So thank you very much for that. Okay. So I've talked about, though, I mentioned the Morgan Stanley report. So that's what we're going to jump to now. So I've talked about, not everyone said Tudor was the best thing out of Watches and Wonders, but it got said a lot. And commercially, I think they made a lot of the right plays. Tony, who was here in the chat earlier, was on a panel with Ken, who was on. I had Patrick from Pocket Watch Time. I had Carl from My Watch Journey. And one of the things we had a discussion point, I think it was Ken who raised it on the Tudors, was specifically the GMT is Tudor finally gave the people what they wanted, mostly. And there's been a lot of discussion about how next year there's a complete expectation that the Tudor Coke bezel GMT 58 Black Bay is going to lose the gilt and go white with the numbers to make it even more appealing. Like, Tudor has been really big about, it's a lot of people, and I think this is true, actually, that Tudor knows what the public wants, and they deliberately don't give us everything we want, and then they do these iterative adjustments, slowly giving us more. Like, why did it take them this long to do a monochrome Black Bay? It's like, and now there are probably going to be people that want it in a different size, like I don't know. It doesn't matter. They'll do it next year or the year after, sort of thing. But here's the thing. I showed you like the video analytics, and we talked on the views, and we talked a bit about this and the promotion and all this claim about like Tudor giving the people what they want and how big of a deal it is. This does not translate to the marketplace nearly as much as I thought it would before I first ever started looking at the Morgan Stanley reports. So here you go. This is the Morgan Stanley report. This is one from 2024, so it looks back at 2023. But I love this table. This is over at professionalwatches.com. I have a link in the video description that'll take you to this article because this table is awesome. It actually goes all the way back to 2017. Tudor's not, you can't see it because of my picture, but Tudor's not actually in the list in 2017. This is the top 20. Tudor was at number 20 in 2018. Then they jumped to 18th in 2019. And then they jumped to 15th for 2020, 2021, 2022. Pandemic years. Remember, pandemic arrives in the United States broadly March 2020. That's when government reaction started to kick in. 2022, remember, it was March and April, depending on the model and brand. But for most brands, March 2022 was peak secondhand pricing. And then the bottom fell out of all of it. And a bunch of people were in total denial, saying that these prices were going to stabilize, and they did not. They did not quickly stabilize. 2023, Tudor is back down to 17th. They've not been this low on the list since 2019. They're still above where they were in 2019 by one ranking. But here's my point. They're not, this says that they're not the hype that we all say they are. Like, who's all outselling them? Everyone, surely no. Like Parmigiani's not on this list, but I mean, Swatch. This is interesting. First time ever, Swatch, like not Swatch Group, Swatch with the Moon Swatch is here at 13th. This is on dollars sold, so that they're pushing out so much that these estimates are that Swatch outsells Tudor in dollars is fascinating to me. But like, again, it's not everyone's better than them. It's almost everyone is better than them. In the top 20, the three brands that are currently beneath Tudor are Panerai, which they haven't come out with a creative design since their inception. No, sorry, Panerai fans, but all their watches look the same. Bulgari, okay, I don't know. They put Bulgari all over the dial, a very fashiony fashion brand. And then poor little Chopard, which actually got all the way up to 18th during the pandemic, but they're back down at 20th. But hey, Lucent Steel's going to save them. Trust me, it's going to save them. But what's ahead of Tudor? Hermes, which has passed them now, a leather company. TAG, JLC, even with all the price increases. which JLC's actually sort of stabilized themselves because they used to be 10th when this started, looking back to 2017. They have fallen, which isn't surprising because they can't make a sports watch to save their life. Then there's the Swatch, Hublot, IWC, Tissot, Breitling, Vacheron, Longines, Richard Mille, Patek, AP is up in 4th now, Omega, Cartier and Omega traded positions back in 2020, and Cartier stayed number 2 since then. And then, of course, the number 1 Swiss brand in dollars sold is Rolex. But for all of this, I talked about how the Patek video views do, how Tudor does versus Cartier. Tudor is down here in the bottom 5 of the top 20, and we give them all this attention. So that's where I posit that question that is the title of this live stream: is Tudor overhyped? Based off of how much we praise them and talk about them and say they're giving the consumers what they need and want and all the rest of it, and how they're making all these great decisions with the Black Bay line. And it's not just the Black Bay line, it's everything else. I mean, the Pelagos, we go to their website here. I have a link to their website in the show notes video description if you want to go and read them. But I mean, it's not just Black Bays. It's definitely where they put most of their effort, but you've got all these Pelagos models as well. You've got the more interesting to some people stuff like the Ranger and things. They do all of this stuff. They kind of purportedly lean into what Rolex used to be. But I look back at this chart and I'm like, people aren't buying these watches, guys. That top 20 isn't bad. But when you consider that Tudor's hanging out around Hermes and Panerai and Bulgari and Chopard, not hanging out with Longines, Vacheron, Breitling, and Tissot, whatever this interest is in watch media, in watch YouTube, in watch podcasting, it does not translate to people actually buying these things. So that's what I wanted to have a conversation. So those of you who are watching live, and if you're not, you're watching the recording, feel free to comment, because I'd like to know because I don't have the answer. I don't know. I'd like to know why you guys think these two things they're not matching up. If Tudor was as hot as all of these fans say it is, then it shouldn't be this low on the top 20. It should be quite a bit higher. I mean, it's a luxury priced product. Even like the 1926s on MSRP and the men's sizes, I think start around $2,000 US. They're definitely losing versus watch brands that sell at cheaper rates. Tissot is not a luxury watch brand. Most of their watches are sub $1,000. Breitling has made huge strides climbing this list, as we know under Kearns, has really made a lot of effort. But again, Swatch, just regular cheap Swatch, being so high up above Tudor. So it's not just, the more prestigious brands are the ones that Longines and Tudor basically, like price-wise, sort of on par with each other. So it's not just, the more expensive watches are the ones that are at the top of the list. Yeah, at the very top. Yeah, Rolex, Cartier, Omega. But again, Rolex, Cartier, Omega are not Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, and Richard Mille, which are the 3 beneath it. So it's not just what the average price of the watch is. You can make up for it in volume. We see it happen every year with Tissot. We see it happen now this year with Swatch. But Tudor is way down on this list. But we talk them up an awful lot. So do people just like talking about, that's what I'll throw out and I'll catch up on chat here. Do people just like talking about, like, we like the old vintage look of historic Rolex, so we like talking about Tudor, but we don't ever put our money where our mouth is, and we don't buy them? Someone buys them, but as was noted earlier from Scott, that just like Grand Seiko, like they're a media darling. They make a good watch. I mean, the Tudors I had were nice watches, but people get rid of them. They flip them at a loss and move on, I guess. Don't seem to move on into better Tudors, though. So and all of this in the context of what the heck is Tudor doing just in general, because we go in, we see 2024. I'm going to load it up on their website again, and okay, excitement, GMT 58. Meeting some market demand purportedly. Does it move them up the list? I don't know, because they haven't moved up the list since they got up to 15th, and all they've done is slide since then. All right, Submariner-fied version of the Black Bay, a 58 18 karat gold with an 18 karat gold bracelet, where I think Tudor totally lost the plot and forgot who their supposed market is. That one's honestly, this gold one, this is going to be mean, but hey, it's my live stream and I can be a little grumpy. This is almost insulting to me that they did this. And I'm someone who laughs that Rolex was like, let's make an 18 karat gold deep sea. That is so absurd. There were people actually, incidentally, who praised that watch online. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. If you actually are excited about the 18 karat gold deep sea, I am deeply, deeply concerned because it is such a douchey watch that I don't know. Maybe in some parts of the world that works. Here in the Midwest, I would be embarrassed to wear it, and I would be embarrassed to wear this. So it's like, and I'm okay with a gold watch on a gold bracelet. I've talked up the Vacheron 222. I think the day dates are fine. This though, I'm just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then no one cared about the Claire de Rose, so whatever. So it's just one of those things. But anyway, let me get caught up with the chat because I'm out of ideas. I've laid it out for you. The market dynamic of the money being made does not align with the amount of talk that we give it. Is it just the media? Are we just self-feeding and it's like, okay, well, we know people watch the stuff. We know people read the stuff. We know people listen to the stuff. So we just keep bringing it up. Tudor turns out a decent number of new models every year, even though they're all really just iterative. So we lean into that because it gives us content. We'll be lucky to see one more like special Daytona this year out of Rolex. Rolex is basically done for the year. They basically do everything at Watches and Wonders. And I've said basically enough, so I'm not going to say it anymore. But anyway, those are my questions. I don't have the answer. So Neff says, the swatch one is interesting. Let me go ahead and get that back up on the screen so people can see it. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing there. There we go. It zoomed in a whole 2 millimeters. There you go. It's right here where the little hand symbol is. It's interesting because they did all of that pretty much on the back of a single model. Exactly. We know this is all those moon swatches. It ain't that Blancpain 50 Fathom. I almost called it 50 Swifty, but I think that's a Taylor Swift thing. So I don't. Yeah. No, it's very impressive. I went and I had to start reading down all of these columns because I'm like, was swatch here before? And because obviously the moon swatch, I would have thought maybe we'd have seen the impact in 2022, but maybe because of shortages and production and stuff. They are in the list. They're just not in the list this year. They were back here. They were 16th in 2017 and they were not 18th in 2018. So they do show up on the list. It's just all of a sudden they fell off the list. Moon swatch came out and then bam, 13th, higher incidentally than Tudor has ever been as far back as at least this table goes. I don't know if they did the rankings prior to 2017 or not. We don't need to go that far back and look. We know Tudor didn't re-enter like the US market and stuff until 2012. So I highly doubt that they would have made the list anyway if we go back further. So because they're not there in 2017. Okay, more chat. Scott, you don't think Tudor rankings will rise after they move all of those 32,000 gold watches? If they move all of the 32,000 gold watches, yes, I do. I think it's going to be like, I can actually envision people buying an 18 karat gold deep sea. I would be embarrassed to be that person, but that's it's a personal taste thing. I know plenty of people who will never wear a Rolex. They think what it says about them would disgust them because of the type of person that they stereotype as being a Rolex wearer. And it's something I don't wrestle with it because I've made my choices on what watches I like, and that's just the way it's going to be. But I sympathize with the view. I understand the view because it's become a thing where you don't know, and this has always been true because Rolex has been popular for so long. But with a Rolex, when you see someone wearing a Rolex, you have no idea if they're into watches. I wasn't when I got my first Rolex. I got it because I viewed it as a symbol of having success professionally. And that's why I bought it. And I wasn't all that successful. So I bought a used, less popular model, but I enjoy the watch a great deal. And it, if anything, kind of triggered the thought of, hey, this is kind of cool. But it wasn't really until I got my second watch that I fell into the collection rabbit hole, which I kind of wish I hadn't because it's a very expensive hole to fall in if you end up buying all these brands that end up on this top 20 list. But yeah, no, Tudor could raise their rankings with all sorts of that. They're clearly trying to, and they had success. Again, remember, we saw them spike up in the pandemic here. Like they jumped up from 18th to 15th for 3 years. They held the position. Here's the question that I think that begs. Is this jump because of something they did or because all this other stuff here we couldn't get? Like it used to be before 2020, there were a whole bunch of stainless steel Rolexes you could walk in and buy. This whole thing where people are pissed about not being able to go, and I'm with them, that I don't have a no date sub, a sub 10,000 sub, saying it again, but a sub 10,000 US dollar watch, and I have the money, pisses me off. I shouldn't have to wait, especially for such a plebe watch like that, because it ain't some special gold limited edition, whatever. It's stainless steel. They've done it for decades. It should be readily available at my behest, and I shouldn't have to pay secondhand. It shouldn't go for more secondhand. I think all sorts of stuff. So in that climate, though, when all the crypto bros were buying, diversifying into, goods, and they were buying up watches, and all of a sudden you struggled to get any of the hot things from Rolex, Omega, Audemars, Patek, and then all of a sudden Tudor kind of goes up because we couldn't get the sports watches we really wanted. Was it something Tudor did? The Black Bay was already out. So was it really something Tudor already did? Or did we jack them up a couple of ranks because we couldn't get what we really wanted? So we settled. We settled on the wannabe brand. And I'm trying not trying to be that judgmental. Tudor makes a very, very nice watch. I'm just saying that from what one would say in their head, it's like, oh, well, shucks, I can't get the Submariner, so I'm going to get a Black Bay 58. Or I really wanted this cool titanium diver that Rolex came out with, the Deep Sea. I can't get it, so I guess I'll get a Pelagos. I don't know if it's that extreme. Probably not in some instances, and in some ways it's probably a little true. Actually, on the video that I had this week on the Q&A, I had someone criticizing the weight. I described it this way. It wasn't like an aggressive question, but they were criticizing my decision. At least I viewed the comment this way of waiting this long for a Submariner. And they complained about that weight process and how ridiculous it is. But what I thought was interesting is then they kind of said that like they would just go and get the Tudor. The Tudor is a nice watch. It's way cheaper. But the irony to me, and that's fine, that can be the decision. It's not a wrong decision. You have to have decided the decision's right for you or not. The irony to the decision for me, and bearing in mind that most of the blame on the supply thing honestly falls on these third-party ADs. Yeah, that Rolex can only make so many watches. It's not Rolex going and saying play games with the client. I think that's why Rolex has moved from 1 million to 1.3 million watches a year. They know long-term this is going to hurt them. It's going to really hurt them if they have someone who retires. Someone mentioned that on my latest video. Like if you go in onto their website, you do all the configuration stuff, and you figure out the precious metal Daytona you want, and you walk into a store to get yourself a retirement gift, and they say you can't have it, that person is not coming back. That retirement watch is going to be something else. They're going to go and buy a Patek instead, and Rolex is dead to them. And that's an issue, but that's not the focus of this video. The irony to me on the comment was their solution to their rage at Rolex was for me to give more money to Hans Wilsdorf Foundation through Tudor. I'm like, if Rolex and their tactics, whether it's their fault or not, if you want to blame them, blame them. I find it humorous that the revenge you would take against Rolex would be to buy Tudor, because you're still giving money to the same owner group, the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. If you really want to punish Rolex, you can't buy Tudor. You got to buy something outside of Hans Wilsdorf, in my opinion, if your goal is to punish. But I do think a lot of people do have that line of thinking, not from a punishment standpoint, but a Rolex, ever since, especially I would argue, since they went to the 6-digit references from the 5-digit, move more and more up the luxury chain. I just say the luxury chain. I don't feel the stainless steel watches are jewelry. I still think they can do everything. I think they're just as hardy, even more hardy than they used to be. And that's kind of what the latest video dives into that I did on the pre-recorded side. But pricing wise, you pay a pretty premium for that steel compared to a lot of competitors. And they're not overpriced outside of the realm of stainless steel. Like Blancpain is charging more, but Blancpain also puts in more finishing. But you look at an Omega and it's like, those are the things that go into it. So it's all of that as a context together that I understand the desire for people to shift into Tudor. It's just when we look at this, it ain't really happening at the volume we who as hobbyists talk about. It's not happening. It's not happening at volume. And maybe that's because for collectors, this is all a big deal. And for a lot of other people who just want to buy a nice watch, if they can't get the Rolex, they don't think, well, let me get the thing that kind of looks like the vintage version of Rolex. They buy the Cartier or the Omega instead because they're way up higher on the list. So they're buying something else is the point. People are buying something else. Neff says, I have a Black Bay. It's a nice watch. The Rolex you can get. Yeah, I had my Black Bay bronze. If it had been smaller, if I had the 58, I might not have gotten rid of the watch. It just was a big slab of metal. Still, though, the bezel action was awesome. I love how big the crown was. It wound really well. I thought the movement felt great winding it. I really enjoy hand winding a movement when it feels nice. That's actually one of the things, like the Parmigiani I have versus the Longa. The Parmigiani feels so much better to wind. It's really interesting. Actually, just like the interaction with the movement. And it's funny because that's an automatic watch. Because once I get it wound, as long as I'm wearing it, I don't have to wind it anymore. But it feels really good. The Longa feels okay to wind. There's a lot of back play in the crown, though. It's a hand wind only watch. It's not uncomfortable to wind, but it definitely is not a highlight being the winding experience. Maybe their new movement they do in the watches feels a lot better than that. That movement had some antiquated tech when they came out with it, but they made their decisions probably to save money when they were spooling up and starting up their business in the 90s. So Tuna says, a darling of the internet community might not equate to sales. Yeah, I think this chart shows that's the case. What intellectually, why do we think that is, though? Is there something wrong with the watches? Because again, the two I've had, I didn't enjoy them enough to keep them, but I did think they were very, very nice watches. A lot of moving them along for me stemmed more from other stuff. Like I want to wear all the watches. So when I'm not wearing something, I start to really examine, should I keep it? And I had other watches that were filling those same roles, like the 1926. I have so many time plus date watches, like especially at this point. Like why would I wear that when I could wear my Parmigiani instead? It's like, oh, well, I need something that holds up a little bit better. Okay, well, why would I wear kind of the generic Datejust style sports watch? This is why I'm not interested in Datejust either. Like, why would I wear that watch? If I need something more sporty, I'll throw on a dive watch or I'll put on my Explorer 2. If I need a dress watch, I'll wear a real dress watch. I don't need the in-between watch. Those watches, I think, work a lot better for people that want to go anywhere, do anything style that they can wear with a suit or they can wear with a swimsuit. And there are people like that. They're called not watch collectors. So, but of course, we all have our own taste. Some people have liked that style and they're going to just like Datejust and stuff because they just like the way they look. There's no wrong answers. I'll just say things really judgmentally so you know exactly what my answers would be. Tuna says, I've never been a fan of the Tudor hour hand. A fair point, but the snowflake style look. But as one can note, like the Claire de Rose, it doesn't have that look. They don't do the snowflake on everything. The 1926s, they don't have the snowflakes. They do the more, what are they, sword style or something? Or it's been a while since I've looked. So, I mean, so they do have options that are not all snowflake hand. If your problem is the snowflake hand on a Black Bay, well, they insist on doing the snowflake hands on the Black Bay. They insist on doing the snowflake hands on the Pelagos. So do they do them on all the sports watches? No. Like the Tudor Royals don't have them. The Tudor Ranger, I hate the Tudor Ranger handset actually on the hour hand. Again, these broad arrow, like I like broad arrow on a lot of watches. It has never worked for me on the Ranger, but there's a sports watch for you if you hate the snowflake hand and you like field watches. So anyway, just one of those things. Koji says, shame about the Claire de Rose. It was the only Tudor I was actually interested in. Well, I think you'll probably be able to walk in and buy one if that's the case. Neff says, waiting pisses me off too. I feel your frustration. And my cherry on top was Rolex discontinuing the watch before I could get one. Now I think I'm done with him. And that, obviously there's a commingling because of the relationship between Tudor and Rolex that I think these sort of discussions are very relevant, even though we're focused on the hype aspects of Rolex on this live stream. But that, I don't know. I haven't even tried to get an interview with someone with Rolex, and I highly doubt they would give me one. But I don't think they are happy with the way things are. There's only so much they can do on the realm of controlling ADs. In fact, there's already, because of the lawsuit that happened in France with a different brand. Actually, no, it was with Rolex, but there's also been a decision made with Hermes, I think in the US. There's some thoughts. The French thing, let me go back to the French thing. I'm rambling. Where they said that it was not right that Rolex was mandating that their authorized dealers couldn't sell the watches online. If that was the case and ADs could sell watches online, it could help with distribution channels where if there are markets where Submariners don't do very well and then they were freed up, you could buy them online at retail. Like, you could solve a lot of issues with the market could kind of partially self-correct. I don't think it can fully self-correct because the demand is outstripping supply. But I think what you've mentioned, Neff, is exactly where, like, Rolex does not want the Neffs of the world to say, screw this. Your company is dead to me, because that money will now go to another brand. And Rolex would like to have your money. Rolex is not money adverse. And when you are, in my opinion, when you are a brand that makes over 1 million watches a year, this ship sailed a long time ago about being this rarefied air where it's hard to get the watch. Rolex was about making a luxury product that people could get. That's the idea. They might have certain models like the Le Mans Daytona that are meant to be exclusive. But their rarefied air is why they have all that diversification in the precious metal side. So those people feel special when they spend $40,000+ on something that doesn't look like every other watch. People who want an Air King want it to look like every other Air King. That's the point. So totally different strategies. And most of what they build, I'm sure, is steel. So that's the trouble that I think it is. The problem is that it's not a hole they can easily dig themselves out of. They're bringing new factories online. All of this, I think, is to really try and it's not a good look. Maybe a little bit of a wait. There was I can't remember which podcast it was on. I don't subscribe to the podcast, but it was on YouTube. I can't remember if it was I think it was Fratello. I think it was Fratello's show. They had a conversation about weights, and some of them were like really praising the idea of waiting, how it makes you excited to get the watch. That does not work for me. But what they did acknowledge is even for people where it does work, there's like a threshold, and it's not, oh, look, the Nautilus 5711, it's a 10-year wait list. Yeah, it's less than 10 years. It's, I think in even all of their opinions, over a year was too long. So we have a limit because you know what? If I've got the money, people with money, it doesn't matter if they're rich or middle class or poor. When you have the money for something, you don't want people to play games with you when you have the means. Like when you're trying to buy a house, the negotiation side of it isn't the fun part. Some people like to haggle pricing, but sitting and waiting is absolutely abysmal for most people. I believe. So it's pissing people off of the brand. I'm pissed off at Rolex for it. And I like the sub no date is like the last Rolex I have any real serious interest in at this time. But I can walk away and I wouldn't really lose any, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I could take that pile of money and put it into a Breguet instead because I got other watches I want. So it's just, I've got money tied up because if the call comes, I need to be able to make the purchase, and I don't purchase on credit. I do not borrow for fun. So it's just, that's the way we have to deal with it. Neff also says, Tudor is the wannabe Rolex brand. That's exactly why I bought mine, to establish a relationship and scratch an itch. And it's scratched. And there have been instances where I have, and that's why when I was at the authorized dealer or a few days ago, I asked if they had any of like the new GMT and stuff, because you know what? I don't have any qualms about owning like if I really liked this in person, like if the gilt worked for me. I like gilt normally. I don't know if I like it on the Coke bezel, but like if this wore really well, it might end up being on the list. Like, because again, my experience with the Tudor watches I've had was very positive. It's just I ended up with other divers, so I let it go. It's like I didn't see the point in having a Black Bay bronze when I have the 300M from Omega. I didn't see the point in having the 1926 when I had at the time my Grand Seiko Spring Drive, which was also time plus date and looked a lot better to me. I still highly encourage people to look into the 1926 if they're looking for something akin to a date just and they're not hell bent on getting a date just. It's still, especially for the price, you can find those on Joma Shop for like, when I bought mine, it was around 1,400. I think they're under 1,600 still. ETA-based or Sellita-based movement, but the watch is thin. It's an automatic watch, not a micro rotor, and it's under 10 millimeters thick. It's a very wearable watch, guys. Very wearable. Scott says, ironic to me that many of these issues like accessibility are positioned like it's a Rolex issue. How readily can one walk into the AD to get AP, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, etc.? Excellent point. So the authorized dealer, the company is named is Tivel here in Kansas City. So I went to Tivel. They're the Patek dealer as well. So I asked them when I was getting ready to leave, I was like, you wouldn't happen to have like a display model Calatrava, because I'd like to see how they wear on my wrist, because I've never been able to try one on. And they were actually a little confused. They're like, well, they knew the answer was no. They didn't have any Pateks for me to try on. They thought maybe their location in Kansas City, Missouri, which is like the flagship store, it might have a Calatrava that I could try on. They noted my interest because the rep I've been working with, who had their day off when I went in, emailed me back and said, so you were interested in looking at a Calatrava? And I was like, well, I was also asking about the Tank Americana because I also want to know how that wears on my wrist. I have a good sense how the Calatrava will wear, but I was like, well, I was there. Why not? But no, again, it's not, I can't walk in and get those. So the difference there, of course, is Scott, which, it's sort of interesting because, there's collecting and there's the desire to, be excited and interested in the watches. And then there's like the push pull of the snobbery of it. But the point blank answer to this is you're absolutely right. But most people don't care about the problem with getting the Audemars Piguet or the Patek or a Richard Mille or whatever, because they're not remotely in the price bracket to ever consider it. For a lot of people, and it makes total sense, because before I got into watch collecting, I would have never thought it was so hard for me 20 years ago when I bought my used Explorer 2 to pay the, with tax, I think it was like $3,600. You have to understand, I'm sure a lot of you think back, go do the Wayne's World thing, think back in time and remember what it was like to buy a watch that wasn't like a drugstore watch, that wasn't like $100 or less. And I mean, this watch was like stickered at $3,460. And I was like, holy crap, this is a lot of money. I remember I got a raise at work for taking on some new responsibilities. It was more than my pay increase was for the year to buy the watch with tax. And I was like, holy crap. So I didn't look at watches for over a decade after that. And so for a lot of people, Rolex, not 18 karat deep seas, not these not even the Daytonas necessarily, at least not the precious ones. Like for them, like it's a one-time thing. And the idea of spending $15,000 for a Daytona retail, like that's almost as much as a Corolla, right? You're like within $5,000 of a Toyota. It's a lot of money. So long story short, for a lot of people, Rolex is in the conversation because you can get a number of Rolexes if they were available under 10,000 new. Like a lot of Datejust are at that price point. A number of the professional watches. What's the average professional price point of the Rolex watch? It's like around $12,000. So it's obtainable with Patek and AP, and you're starting more around 30,000, 25, 30,000. No, that's just a bridge a lot of people won't ever cross. Scott says luxury retail is not attainable at a whim. That's part of the smoke and mirrors. Hermes, Porsche, and many other brands will make you play games, spend money, and wait. It's gross but reality. And it's something I did not know about, Scott, until I got into watches and then heard that this happens in other places. I think the challenge is with Rolex is they can't really have it both ways. They sort of try to, but I don't necessarily think the brand's trying to, but that's the boat they're in. It's a luxury product, but not at luxury quantities. They make 1 million watches a year. It's weird because I've been in the hobby so long now. It's easy for me to kind of lose sight of that. But how luxury can you really be at 1 million units a year? Not every model, obviously, is 1 million units, but we know the steals most of it. So that's what's so frustrating is there's nothing, it's machine finished product. There's nothing inherently special about an Explorer or a Submariner or an Air King or a GMT Master 2 that honestly warrants having to wait. That's what's so frustrating. And when you look over at their competitors like Omega, most of the stuff isn't a wait list, and they make a whole bunch. They don't even make as much. They don't make as many watches as Rolex does. But I can go in and get my Submariner 300M or my Speedmaster, Snoopy aside, or get my DeVille or my Constellation, and I'm not going to have to wait. That's the issue. So they're in a real their advertising and word of mouth reputation has worked a little too well for them. They're supposed to be accessible. That's my view. Rolex does not want to. They have the Le Mans and stuff that's inaccessible. Their steel sports stuff, I think they truly want it to be available when you walk in. And then later, you decide you want something even fancier, and that's where they get you. It's on the second sale. That's where I think they're like, oh, yeah, we want, in a perfect world, I think, in a perfect world, Rolex wants you to go in and buy your no-date sub or your date just, and then come back in, and with that, use that to try and get the date. Like the Daytona is not supposed to be a walk-in and buy watch. It hasn't been for a long time. But most of this other stuff is supposed to be. And then they use that to get you your Daytona, let you get your precious metal version, that sort of thing. That's the buying history. It's like with Patek or Longa. Like Longa doesn't want you to have to go and wait to get a Longa 1 or a Saxonia. You're supposed to be able to walk in and get those. You have to buy those so you can get your Odysseus. That's the idea. And AP does a similar thing, as grubby as it is. Like Ken's weighed in on it before. There's a whole chain of stuff. Like you have to buy this thing. Like you have to buy a code 1159 and they get a less popular Royal Oak overseas, and then you're allowed to buy the regular Royal Oak that you want, and that gives you access to the one with a complication. Like there's a path. With Rolex, you walk in and there's like nothing available. I'm supposed to have, where's my entry level? Like they're supposed to be entry level. Where's my entry level watch? The only thing that's in the display case are the lady date just. That's not going to work for me. My wrists are small, but not that small. So anyway, but a very excellent point, Scott. Neff says, my advice is to not tie up your money. Mine was tied up waiting for a Rolex, and while it was, I let multiple Tonda 1950s pass by, and now they're triple the price. It's not available. If it's not available, count me out. Fair enough. I also, people who know me, this is kind of funny because I talk about all these watches on the channel, but I am spend averse. I hate spending money. So my tied up money is earning, and it's in a high yield savings account right now. So it's earning interest. So my money's still working for me while it's tied up. So I don't feel too bad about it because that's what it would be doing normally anyway. I feel you on the 1950s because I looked at those and I saw how much they used to be 3 or 4 years ago. And I was like, oh God, I almost feel like I'm wronging myself if I were to buy one now, even though as far as dress watches go, those are still quite so much of the Parmigiani line before the current CEO is very, very good deal. I saw Watchbox finally sold they had a watch that's like my Parmigiani, except it was a silver dial and it was bigger. It was like a 41 millimeter. And that one sat, oh my gosh, maybe a year. They finally moved it like within the last 2 weeks because I saw it wasn't on the list when I checked out their Parmigiani collection. I was like, that was probably a pretty good buy because I bet I got mine through them. And I remember when I called the agent I've worked with before, and he had noted I ended up buying it through their eBay store because they had sometimes eBay does deals. It was better that way because I could use my credit card, get my credit card points, and it was the same as the wire price was going to be. But they were already, I think they noted, they let that watch go to me. And it was already listed like a special deal for Dennis. It was like they were listing it $1,000 under what they bought it for, was what I think he indicated. And I bet that other Parmigiani went for even more of a loss because it sat for so long. But anyway, it's just one of those things. So yes, absolutely. No, if there was something I was super compelled, like if I saw the Vacheron 1921 in 36.5 millimeters in white gold with the strap I wanted at the price I wanted, I would shrug and just spend the money because half of my money for that would be out of the sub. But I think the 1921 should be a watch I should be able to get at around $20,000, and it's not quite there yet. But I think Vacheron will whittle it down enough eventually as more and more people. The problem is the 36 millimeters a newer watch. The 40s are all over the place. 36.5 only came out a couple of years ago. So anyway, so I've got things like that are kind of like, okay, yeah, I may move that around, but I still want enough of a deal on the watch. And if I think the watch is going for too much, it's like, do I really want the 1921? It wears really well, but they got some nice tonneau shaped watches that I can get $8,000 less. So that's kind of the push pull that I deal with. But anyway, those are all I had in terms of thoughts and what I want to say about the Tudor and whether or not it's overhyped. I don't know if we arrived at any answers, but I think we had some very interesting discussion at least. And let me lean into this Morgan Stanley chart, which is always fun to talk about. Scott notes that the Vacheron is at the top of his dream list. It's beautiful. Yes, when I was in Dallas, this is all just wind down stuff that people want to check out. But yeah, I tried the 36 and they had a 40 on display when I was in Dallas at the Vacheron boutique, and they mentioned the 36.5, and I tried it on, and I thought it wore as a squarish watch because the case is very squarish. It wears very well for me. 6.75 inch wrist. I tried on the white gold one. They actually got out the rose gold, which was what I was more interested in. But the white gold actually looked really good in person, very subtle. I think both. Honestly, I'd be happy with either colorway. But yes, very, very nice looking watch. I might. And so I see Scott's question: was the strap more red or brown in color? They have both. Actually, Watchbox had one of these recently in rose gold, but it was on the bright red strap. I think the bright red strap is, I tried it on the brown strap, and the brown strap it's darker than this. It's almost like this wood grain of my pocket knife brown. It's a rich brown, dark. The red, they did not have that one on the two they got out for me. I think they had another watch with it. And the red is a bright red from near I can tell. For me, and the reason why I didn't even contact Watchbox when they've already sold the 1921 they had, but I didn't contact them on it because they had it on the red strap. I think the red strap looks too feminine. It leans a little on it's so bright. I feel it makes the watch have a more feminine flavor to it. Whereas the darker brown strap, I'll see if I can load it up here. Looks, I think, really, really good, and is a better look overall for the watch. So let me show you what I mean. So I think this image is relatively, yeah, sure, you can know where I am. Relatively true to form on this. So this is the rose gold on the red strap, but here's the brown version. See, it's a nice, rich, dark brown. So I think it looks very, very handsome in this configuration. So they definitely were like, this is going to work for multiple. This is going to work for multiple. Both genders can wear this. So they're like, let's have this bright red, which you see what it does, how it pops the watch and makes it more of a fashion statement. You put it on the brown, and it gets none of the word. I'll use the word regal, even though it's an American themed watch. I'll use the word regal. And so, yeah, there are those, and then they have the white gold was a little bit different, so it's a little because I saw both. So in the white gold, you see it's got a little bit more of this like cherry color to it. I still think it looks very, very nice with this in the white gold. I don't know if they have the two strap choice. I think it might just be one strap choice in the white gold. So anyway, and then in the 40x40, it's a little bit different for both. But so yeah, I thought this looked nice. I mean, the edges, it's kind of fumade, so the edges are darker, but the texturing and everything on the dial is really, really nice. So I like both. I like the darker straps. So in that regard, yeah. I thought this was more subtle in person than this seems in the photo. But I think it looks really, really good. So Neff thinks, yeah, it looks way better on the brown. Yeah, I think so. Brown is a really safe color for straps in general. I mean, I could see why people like, especially like if a woman was trying to get something that was really like really calling attention to the watch. A red strap's really going to call attention. I have red straps. I like them on sports watches. So I will wear like a red silicone with a dive watch, like my Orient Cano. And I think that looks really sharp, but it's meant to be loud in that instance. This watch for me is too elegant for me to want it to be loud. I want it to be subtle and sophisticated. And that's how I think it looks in this configuration and over with the with this brown, which just complements the rose gold really well. That, it might blend a little too much if they had done this on with the other strap from the white gold version. It's interesting, but of course, you probably find, if you're getting one from a distributor with the watch sizes, the straps, I'm sure, are interchangeable. They'll probably be more than happy to move a strap around for you first party through the boutique. Second hand, you kind of stuck with what you can get. But Coach says the patina on that strap is fantastic. The one on the white gold, yeah, it is. And Coach says, I've seen the 1921 in platinum with blue Breguet numerals. I've not seen that one in person. That I've looked at that online. I know Watchbox, actually, Tim Masso has a video with it. And yes, it very much calls its attention to itself. I think for me, the platinum moves it outside of my price range. So, okay. So anyway, I'm going to end it here. So this concludes our Tudor overhyped / not overhyped Vacheron Constantin 1921 and how great it looks on all straps show. So I will be back next week. In 2 weeks, I won't. I'll talk about that on the next episode. I'll have to miss one of the Saturday live streams for work. But I will plan to be back next Saturday. So we'll have this at the regular time. I don't know if I'll get any pre-recorded stuff out during the week. Depends if anything strikes my fancy. Looks like the Q&A video actually did fairly well. Like I've got a lot of compliments on people enjoying it. So I'll try and revisit that again. I need a better way to gather. I don't have an Instagram channel for this channel, and maybe that would have been a better way to try and gather comments, because I don't get great response on YouTube. So I'll have to think about that. I have a Facebook channel, but there are not very many followers there. So I haven't decided the best way to collect questions, but I had enough good ones last time that I ended up going like twice as long as I had originally planned to make the video, but there were so many multi-parts. How could I not? But I mean, anyway, so we'll see how it goes, but we'll plan for a live stream. Don't know the topic yet. We might have some more new news actually get caught on. So that'll be my preemptive plan, but we'll roll with it as time goes along. And we'll end with Neff saying, so in summary, Tudor looks better on the brown strap and Vacheron's 1921 is extremely overhyped. Yep. Cool. Bye. Yes. Bye everyone. Talk to y'all on the next one.